They get back home and there is a note on their garage on notebook paper. What does the note say? The note says, "Hi, what's going on, guys and gals? Kendall here with Renos for Pros and Joes, helping you simplify the renovation and remodeling process. On this channel, we do hands-on product, tool, and gear reviews, as well as renovation tip and strategy videos like this one. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some tips and pointers on how to order construction materials. And this information is going to be good for pros as well as DIYers. So I'm going to start off with some best practices, then I'm going to explain to you why they're best practices, essentially telling you what not to do and why you don't want to do it that way. And then I'm going to share some horror stories. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. The first tip is going to be to get your materials in your possession or in your hands as soon as possible. And there's two main benefits that you have from doing this. Number one, you're going to remove the chances for material delivery to delay your project. And also having the products in hand in advance is going to give you the opportunity to inspect the materials once they've been delivered for quantity and condition. So if you have issues that arise once you've gotten all your materials on the site, you'll have time to go back and address those before it's actually time for the work to be done. The next tip for how to order construction materials is order more than the bare minimum. And the reason why you want to order more than the bare minimum is that you want to anticipate that you're going to have broken pieces in your material when it's delivered, particularly if you're talking about something like tiles and things like that. If you're ordering lumber, don't expect every single one of your 2x4s that comes off the truck to be perfectly straight. If you've got a few extras on there, it can't hurt. And worst case scenario, you can return the ones that you don't use after your project is complete. Another reason why you want to order more than the bare minimum is that sometimes the materials are going to have variation in condition and color and texture. And this is particularly true when we're talking about things like tile, especially natural stones. And so you always want to make sure that you have more than enough, because you may have some oddball pieces when you actually go through the materials that you choose that you don't want to use. So you want to be able to set those aside and not be forced to use them because it's all that you have. So you're going to order materials for that reason. And also along that same vein, you want to try to order your materials from the same lot. I'm going back to my tile example because it's a really good one, but when you're ordering tile, you want to make sure that you're getting your tile boxes off of the same pallet, because you want to try to make sure that they're coming out of the same die lot. As you have more and more products run through a factory, you may have some variations in color, and so these boxes on this pallet may be slightly different than the ones here, and the ones that went to store A may be different than the ones that went to store B. So ideally, you want to be able to pull all that material from the exact same spot. You want to make sure that you can get them from the same die run, and sometimes when you're looking at the material or the product information on the side of the box, it will have some of that information on there. And so you want to try to match up your boxes if you can, to try to help alleviate the potential of having mismatched tiles and products once it's time to install. Now, the next tip that I want to share with you with regards to ordering materials for construction is more of an all-encompassing one, and that is, don't allow your project schedule to be negatively affected by the store's delivery logistics. And this is especially true if you're going to be ordering materials close to the time or the date that you want to have the materials installed. So the more of a buffer that you have in there between order date to install date, the better for you all around. And in order to try to alleviate some of that dependency on the store's logistics for delivery, if you've got a pickup truck, this is the ideal time to use it. So if you're someone who has ordered materials in a store, and specifically I'm talking about big box stores, if you've ordered materials in the store and that material has to come into the store and then be put on a truck and brought out to your job site or project location, if it's things that you're going to be able to easily pick up yourself in your own personal vehicle, if you've got a friend who has a pickup truck and you can safely transport the items to the location, then that can alleviate a lot of opportunity for mishaps. And this is especially true if you're in a larger city, and we're going to get to that here in just one second. So the next thing I want to do is share with you the why not, and give you a more in-depth reasoning behind why I've made the suggestions that I have. Number one reason why you should follow those steps is because, number one, Big box retailers are not typically very good at the logistics of delivering the material to the job site. Now, I'm specifically talking about big box retailers. I'm not talking about your lumber supply houses and places like that, because those places typically run like clockwork because the majority of their clientele is business to business, and they understand the importance of timeliness with working with their customers. I'm talking specifically about big box stores. So, the next point that I want to make still hinges on the first point, which is that delivery can be hard to plan around with regards to getting things delivered from a big box store. The majority of the times, they're going to get a phone call the night before the scheduled delivery date, and they're going to give you a window of time to expect the delivery driver to show up with the materials, okay? So you're already less than 24 hours notice on exactly what your timetable is going to be for the next day for delivery. And so essentially you're blocking off half of that day in order to try to be on site or have someone there on site to anticipate the delivery. So the next piece of this is that it's subject to change. It is very common to get a call in the middle of the day from the driver letting you know that he's going to be delayed or she's going to be delayed, and they're going to have to push your time down into the afternoon if you had a morning delivery. And I've also seen deliveries that were scheduled for the afternoon have to get pushed to the next day. So these are also things that you have to consider just from a time standpoint, is that if you're going to have someone there in order to receive the materials, you've got to plan around having them basically just hanging loose in anticipation for someone to arrive with the materials. The next point that I want to make, I touched on in the point just before, which is the drivers for these delivery trucks work certain hours and shifts. And so they're not working indefinite number of hours. And so that vehicle that they're driving has to be back at the store at a certain time, and they have to be off the clock at a certain time, which means that if your delivery is scheduled for a certain time and you get down into the afternoon and the clock is running short, they're going to take the truck back to the shop and park it and go home, and you'll have to just reschedule it for the following day, as opposed to them working late and bringing out your materials after hours. That's just something that does not typically happen, so you need to be aware of that. So the next point that I want to make with regards to having materials delivered is that they typically do not walk those materials inside. And so that means if you're having something heavy delivered like drywall and tile and things like that, you're going to have the manpower there on site in order to bring that material inside. Because when they pull up with the delivery truck, they're going to take the big forklift off, they're going to scoop off the material, and then they're going to drop it on the ground on site wherever you've designated that you wanted it to be delivered to. Once they do that, they're going to put the machine back on the truck and they're going to roll out. Taking the material from its drop spot to the interior of the property is going to be the responsibility of you or your contractor. And so you need to either have the manpower there to move that material if it must be moved inside immediately, or you're going to have to make arrangements to cover that if the weather or the elements are going to be a concern for you. The next thing that I wanted to point out is that most of these delivery trucks are going to be flatbeds. They're not going to be box trucks, which means they're open to the elements, which means that if it's raining or it's doing something crazy outside, they're not going to deliver that material, okay? Unless you specifically ask them to, and if you do ask them to deliver it when bad weather is forecasted or when bad weather is going on, they are not going to be held responsible for the condition of the material once it arrives to your location, because they would not have delivered it unless you specifically asked them to. So it's another thing to keep in mind, is that you're going to have to watch the weather with regards to the scheduling of the delivery of the material. Okay, so now that I've explained the why not, you may be wondering what's the worst that can happen. So now it's story time, and I'm going to share with you two stories. Both of them are horror stories, and their horror is on slightly different levels, but the end result was essentially the same, which was delays on the project. So in the first story, I was on a project and I was actually the one that ordered the materials. And the materials were scheduled to be delivered on a Friday morning. Friday morning came, I had men on the job site there to receive the materials, and no one showed up, okay? And then I get a call around midday saying that the driver's been delayed and they will be there later on in the afternoon. Of course, you know how this went. This is a horror story. The afternoon came and they still did not show up. And at approximately 4:30 or so, I got another phone call letting me know that they would not be coming and they were going to reschedule for the delivery for Saturday. Okay, so now we're on to the weekend. So Saturday delivery times are typically going to be shorter, so they don't typically run until 5. They typically cut off right around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, somewhere right around in there. So it wasn't a huge deal because there was work going on. And so Saturday came, Saturday lunchtime came, and then Saturday around 2 o'clock, the phone rings from the logistics company stating that what? They're not going to be able to deliver today, and that I need to call the store in order to reschedule the delivery, okay? Okay, so that's already bad enough. So we got bumped twice. We got bumped Friday, we got bumped on Saturday, okay? So the materials that were needed for the job site for the following week for installation are now not there. So Monday comes. Now, what do you think happened on Monday? That's right, rain. So we go into a heavy rain season or period where it rains for days, like 4 or 5 days straight, almost solid rain, 24 hours a day, 5 or 6 days in a row, okay? And so somewhere around the 4th or 5th day, I decided to push things forward. I ended up going to a moving truck rental place, renting a truck for half a day, driving the truck to the store where the material was, and having them load the material on the box truck, delivering it to the job site, and then returning the moving truck back, and then heading back out to the job site. So this was a worst case scenario, but in this particular scenario, there wasn't really any other way to do it short of continuing to wait, because as I said, the material comes on a flatbed truck. And in this situation, it was not the type of material that could easily be moved or safely moved on the back of a pickup truck, even if you've got an 8-foot bed, because I believe this was a trim package. And so we're talking about 16-foot baseboards and window casings and things like that. So things that not only can't get wet, but things that are also very long and kind of flimsy, if you will. And so they're things that really need to be resting and not something that needs to be kind of in a position where it can get caught in the wind and bend and flap and flex, because it'll be broken to pieces in no time. And so that was the best solution for that scenario. Okay, so second horror story. The second horror story, I was actually not the one who ordered the material. My client ordered the material. This is for a renovation job. And as we got closer to the time of needing the materials, I began to ask more questions. Now, just as a fun fact, the store location was only 3 miles from the property on this particular situation. And so they ordered materials that had to be brought into the store, and then the store agreed to deliver the materials out to the property. So we're talking about a 3-mile drive each way, 6 miles round trip from the store, okay? And so, of course, we get close up to the date, and I just started to get a funny feeling because I've been doing this for a while, and I just felt like there was probably gonna be some little issues where things were not gonna go completely smooth. And so what happened? Of course, the day came for install, and the material was not there yet. I had actually already anticipated this, and I had built in a buffer into the schedule and kind of already pushed things out a little bit. And so the material did not arrive. The client called in to get additional information on it. They were responsive and apologetic, and they assured them that the materials would be delivered the following day. Well, the following day, I believe, was a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. It's always on the weekend, right? So Saturday, the materials did not arrive, okay? The client went into the store again to try to get some clarification on what was going on. When they got to the store, they were told that in their system, the materials had already been delivered, okay? And so this conversation went on, and ultimately, when my client left the store, there was no clear understanding of where the materials were. Because in the computer, it says that the materials have been delivered. They were asking my client specific things about their characteristics of their house that I guess the delivery driver had notated when he delivered the materials, all of which were not consistent with my client's house. So you know where we're going with this. So my client leaves the store, goes back to their home. This is over the weekend. This is like a Saturday. They get back home, and there is a note on their garage on notebook paper. What does the note say? The note says, "Hi, I think I have some stuff that belongs to you give me a call. So my client picks up the phone and calls the number on the notebook paper. Sure enough, all the materials that they had ordered are at the person's house who left the note. Now here's the funny thing. If you're familiar with Atlanta metro area, most of the communities outside of the city proper are in subdivisions, okay? The majority of the homes that have been built in the last 30 years or so are gonna be in subdivisions. And so this property that I'm working in was in a subdivision, okay? The materials are not at a house in the subdivision. The materials are in a house on down the way. And so luckily, my client had a pickup truck and was able to drive over to these folks' house, who were gracious enough to come by and leave the note. They loaded all the materials onto the truck, and then they brought them home. And then he sent me the text information letting me know that everything had arrived, and we were able to go ahead and reschedule everything, or put the schedule back together based on having the materials in place and everything. So the moral of the story is these type of things happen all the time, and it can completely derail your project. So if you're able to do so, and you're going to have materials that are going to be ordered and they're going to come into the store, if at all possible, bring the materials to the job location yourself, because it's going to save you a lot of potential headaches and stress, because you're not going to have to worry about where that material is with regards to being delivered on a given day. You're not going to have to waste time and manpower waiting to receive that material, and you're not going to have to worry about trying to reschedule and losing multiple days in a row and essentially being at the mercy of the delivery folks in order to get something done. So hopefully you found this video informative. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.